Hello, and welcome to the future of work. I bet you didn't realize that we were going to get here literally overnight. We are in a completely new landscape, and as we prepare to emerge into our new set of normal, many are taking the time to evaluate what habits and routines birthed out of COVID necessity should be added to our new normal, and what should be omitted and what could be changed. One trend that took the world by storm is the emergence of remote teams and remote work. And while this has been the norm for some organizations, for many organizations, remote teams were unheard of a few months ago. And as we re-emerge into a collective society once again, many organizations are re-evaluating the benefits and the challenges of remote teams, which leads me to this. How can we build and lead high-performing teams, high-performing remote teams? Well, my name is Amber Vanderberg, and I am the founder of the Pathways Group, where we work with teams all over the world, training in effective leadership, team building, and strategic HR. And I travel physically with a mask and virtually around the globe from my library, speaking and consulting with organizations that are transforming the way that we do work. First, let's acknowledge that not all remote teams are equal. There are remote teams that are globally remote, meaning that they have team members from all over the world. And this team can be more diverse and have greater breadth of network, experience, and knowledge, but also have additional challenges in cultural communication and in collaboration and of course, time zones. And today I do lead teams that are globally remote. In the same regard, there are domestically remote teams, in addition to locally remote teams, which are teams that are in the same general city or geographic area, but then they work from home. And then there are also hybrid remote teams, which means that their teams go into the physical office some days of the week, and then they also work from home. Now, keep in mind the type of remote team that you are seeking to build and lead can act as a guide for you to build your policy, really change your leadership style, and to really build that organizational culture. So keep in mind the type of remote work that you are seeking to implement within your organization as you are creating that policy and developing that remote culture. Now, I have lived and worked all over the world in international business, and I believe that leading great teams boils down to four simple pillars of team management or human management or human resources. Now, I'm not using humans as resources. I am providing resources to humans so that they can truly be successful and achieve their goals. And I believe that these four pillars will help us build great organizations. And while the application and the tools towards success are slightly different in a physical teams rather than remote teams, these four pillars are going to be the same. And the first pillar is really simple. We have to build our team. That's right. It's really that simple. Build your team. If you're a hiring manager, you are a decision maker in the future of your company, because recruitment is literally how organizations build the future. So, what factors should you consider when building your team? What specifically should you be looking for? Is it personality, experience, education? I was working with one hybrid remote team as the HR director, and we had a serious discussion about what our ideal team player looked like. And one of my favorite authors and leadership gurus, Patrick Lencioni, writes that the ideal team player has three major factors. First, they're humble. Now, a humble team member is trainable, and they're open to healthy conversation. They don't have huge egos, and they are truly a team player. A humble person is adaptable. They listen to others and they admit mistakes as learning opportunities. And in a remote team, the likelihood of mistakes due to miscommunication and cultural misunderstanding is massive. A humble team member must be able to acknowledge misunderstandings and to be proactive in learning from other cultures, communication styles, and ways of work. They must be adaptable. So, whenever you are recruiting for a humble team member, you can ask different questions about adapting to new landscapes and dynamics. Ask them about misunderstandings and miscommunications and how they have or would have handled that situation. Remember, you want to seek a team player that is humble. Now, the next major factor of an ideal team player is someone who is hungry. A hungry team member is always longing to improve and to be better. They love to take on new opportunities and have a really good work ethic and a drive to grow. Hungry people have energy and passion that is unmatched compared to the warm bodies that fill some organizations. So, whenever you are recruiting a hungry team member, ask about something for which they have worked hard. Ask them about how they spend their free time and ask about their work ethic as a youngster. See, these questions help you to get an idea of their hunger as a team player in your organization. Remember, much of remote work is self-driven, and in any team, trusting your team members to be good stewards of their time and resources and energy is really important. But it is an absolute dire necessity in remote teams. And you want to have confidence that your remote workers are hungry and self-driven and motivated. Emerging technology plays a critical role in remote work, and equipping your team members with continuing education and tools to thrive in a remote workplace is crucial. So ask your candidate about their experience with continuing education and their openness to new technologies in particular. Assess cultural or current technological literacy, and also ask them about foreseeable future technological learnings. See, the world is changing really quickly, and it is vital that your remote team member be eager to learn and change, and really to put forth the effort to stay relevant in this evolving workforce, to have the relevant skills to be successful in this evolving workforce. So, seek a team player that is hungry. The final factor of an ideal team player is someone who is smart. Now, a smart team player is both technically smart and has people skills. So a smart person is capable of doing the job, but they also have high EQ or emotional intelligence to be a quality people person and team player. So whenever you are looking for a smart team member, ask about their personality, about handling difficult colleagues. Ask about their ability and skills to do the specific job. Now, these questions help you to get an idea of the smartness that they possess for the job as a player in your organization, and also as a person within your team. Empathy is absolutely key in remote employees. This is oftentimes overlooked, but empathy is really, really important. And so it really requires us to have that specific ability and intentionality to do well. See, just because we are remote doesn't mean that it takes out that human element. So we must be able to be empathetic and to build those relationships even though we're not in the exact same room. A major pain point in many remote teams is a lack of personal connection. And a smart team member builds connections with others and seeks relationships. A smart team member is well equipped to do the job in ability and skill in IQ, but also has a tremendous high level of EQ as well. Also, remote players have to be adaptable to different cultures and schedules and time zones, and ask them about their flexibility to schedules and if they can be smart in different types of relationships. So remember, it's really important to seek a team player that is smart. So seek a player that, of course, is dependable on work. Ask about their flexibility and their adaptability for work, especially in those different time zones if you're working with a globally remote team. It's so important. Now, your ideal team member doesn't possess just one or two, but actually has all three of these factors. And if any one of these factors are missing, then the idealness of the candidate can begin to wane. A hungry and a smart player that isn't humble will be too arrogant to train and improve. A humble and a smart person that will do the job, but they might not have the drive to do anything more. A hungry and a humble player that isn't smart will work hard but not be of maximum use and productivity to the team. Now, depending on the job, the fact that John Doe has a really great personality and is personable and dresses for success, it might not have any influence on the job if nobody's going to see the way that he dresses or the way that he interacts with people one-on-one. Or is a really poor communicator face-to-face, but might be an excellent communicator via email. So the questions that you are seeking, the questions that you're asking must be really relevant to the job. The fact that John might be a poor communicator via email might actually be a really significant factor within the job if a good chunk of the job is going to be done via email or via remotely. So remember, those questions that we ask whenever we're seeking those remote workers are not exactly the same as our brick and mortar employees. There's going to be a little bit different factors that we are considering. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to review the questions that you ask in your interview process to intentionally recruit your ideal remote team member whenever you are building your team. Now, so the first pillar is to build your team. The next pillar is to value your team. We're going to say, yay, you've done it. We have the best team. See, whether you are in person or you are remotely, it is critical that we express value to our team. People want to feel valued. One simple way that we can show our value is to provide the right tools and systems for our team. Communication, project management, and HR tools are all really important for equipping our teams to be successful. And if you say that you care about team success and then deny the investments and the right tools, then it can be really frustrating for employees. So look at your toolbox. The tools for remote workers are actually slightly altered and a little bit different from brick and mortar. So be very specific in asking your remote workers what tools you can provide and what support you can provide for your remote workers to be successful. Go ahead and look at that toolbox and understand that they are going to be a little bit different. Also, logistics are a little bit different. You are factoring things such as time zones and mediums of communication and time off communication. It's going to be a little bit different, so be mindful of that whenever you are creating your policies and equipping your team to be successful remotely. Also, be mindful of phones and emails and modes of communication whenever you are onboarding your remote employees. So personally, I believe it is worthwhile to try and separate personal and professional modes of communication, such as phone and email, in your onboarding process for a couple different reasons. First, it gives a clear distinction between work and professional life and personal life, which for your employee gives a clear separation between the two. But also, whenever you are offboarding your employees, if your team member decides to leave the organization, it can get really messy if you have combined everything in the same email on the same phone, it can get really messy trying to offboard that. So it just makes for a very clean offboarding process if you are very clear in the onboarding process of separating those different modes of communication. So go ahead and look at your toolbox. Another way that we can show value is through compensation and benefits. And for remote teams, this is going to be a little bit different. I mean, does anyone on a remote team really care about Jeans Friday? Probably not. So compensation is going to take into account the industry, the organization, and the position, no matter the status of the work. There has been some conversation about the consideration of the cost of living in the geographic place, especially for remote workers and domestically remote workers. So they are based out all over the country. So this is a new conversation that has been added, a new aspect that has been added to the conversation that you might want to include in your conversation within your organization. And that is the consideration or the omission of taking into account cost of living of the geographic space whenever determining salaries. Now, so yeah, that's the other thing, is really to take a look at that compensation and to come up with a fair compensation factor. And then finally, you can look at your benefits. And this is a really fun part. You can ask your team members what types of benefits they are looking for and what they want. And then you can create a very specific benefits package for your employees. And finally, value your team by, valuing your team. See, lack of social interaction has proven to be tough on some remote team members. So send care packages, check in. Be intentional about building a relationship with your team members. Find ways to connect in your Zoom meetings beyond just professional gab. Really try to get to the core of your relationship building. Some people do this in a variety of different ways. They have themed dress-up days for their Zoom meetings at work. They create a virtual water cooler. But in any case, I want you to try to value your team. So, we've built up our team. We've valued our team. Now it's time to train our team for the championship. So we're going to train our team, all right, for a victory. See, the world of work is really ever evolving, and we must be able to train our employees so that we can stay relevant, so that we can stay competitive, and so that we can stay engaged. Virtual meetups and continuing education can be powerful. But also, don't discredit the power of in-person meetings, say annually or biannually, or some people do it monthly, depending on how vast your geographic separation is. So continue to stay up with your team on continuing best practices and empower your team members to move forward professionally. So take that time to really invest in your training. Imagine if I was an NFL or a professional team coach and I recruited the best players in the country. I paid them the highest salary, and then we never went to practice. Chances are we're not going to win the championship. It's important that we build our team. It's important that we value our team. But it's in the training aspect that we can grow our talent to truly be successful and win those championships. So, remember, we're going to build our team, value your team, train your team for success. I told you there were 4 pillars. We've gone through 3. The last pillar is to keep your team or to retain your team. And you might think, come on, they get to stay at home in their pajamas. My remote workers have a flexible schedule. Why would they ever want to leave? But retention should be at the forefront of your conversation, even in, and especially in, remote teams. Retention in remote teams probably won't come from the over-annoying coworker that sits in the corner and talks really loudly on the phone and eats chips all day. But it might stem in a few other ways. thing is right now there are a lot of remote opportunities, and so you must be very intentional about creating your remote culture and being very intentional in employee engagement and retention. See, like in the recruiting process, relationships require communication, and there is a place for digital communication. Use emojis, GIFs, memes, different modes of communication to relate to your people. Create a digital casual water cooler and have EQ training within your remote teams. Be personal and professional. Now, in professional settings, we have a lot of messages that we want to say, and we want to try to be brief. But don't conflate brief communication with clear communication. The time that you saved in fewer words, in the fewer words that you typed, could actually result in more time being spent by the team trying to figure out what you meant and then misinterpreting it. Don't bombard your team with tons of messages that are in small text, that are in email, text, and phone. Use different types of communication depending on the emotion of the message. So really take a moment to consider the emotion of the message so that you can determine the best mode of communication. As a general rule of thumb, if I have more informational, a more informational message, then I will use email, I'll use text, I'll use a memo. But as I move towards more emotional content or more complex content, that's whenever I'll take the time to pick up the phone and we will have a phone conversation, we'll have a Zoom meeting. If we have the opportunity to have a phone call or have an in-person meeting, I really try and get as personal as possible. This is really important within remote teams. We will have a conversation to decide at what point it is important to stop the email and the text and pick up the phone. So there really is a metrics of how many emails will this take to solve before it's important that I pick up the phone. With most teams, the general rule is 5 to 6 emails. So if I can't solve this within 5 to 6 emails going back and forth, then I'm going to go ahead and pick up the phone, or I'm going to have a Zoom chat to be more clear in my communication and more efficient in my communication. This is really important because it allows for us to be more efficient, it allows for us to be more effective, and it can be very proactive in working against emotions building. Understand that every time that there is a span of time in between communication, there is time for emotions to build. And this can be really a really desired effect. If you are writing like a love letter, then there is a desired effect for that emotion to build. If you are writing something that could be build emotion in another way, then that could be a little bit undesired and can lead to some avoidable coworker tension. So be very intentional about deciding the best way to communicate within your team. Now, of course, if you have information that is very informational, you just need to let people know, then these are meetings that definitely should just be an email. So ask yourself these series of questions of, okay, what is the emotion of this message? What is the relationship of this message? Is this going to take many messages to solve? Is this a problem that we're trying to solve? And ask yourself these questions so that you can determine the best mode of communication whenever communicating with your team. I have spoken with some teams whenever they are talking, whenever they are sending out their emails, and they actually come up with different systems to communicate very clearly to their team if an email needs a response right now, if this is urgent, if it needs response within the next 4 or 5 hours, or if it is really just informational, you can look at this on your own time. And so they will start the email in the subject line of putting for HR, 4-hour response, or urgent, they'll do, now, or 1-hour response. And then on the beginning of the subject line, if it's just informational, then they'll just put info. And so these are little tips and tricks that you can use to be effective in your communication within your team. And these are ways, again, that you can work more efficiently, more effectively and really create a positive work environment. So, so these are a few ways that, yeah, you can engage your employees. Another positive way that you can keep your employees, you can work on your retention, is to create opportunities for growth. So if there is a thought that I will always be sitting on the couch in my pajamas, but if I'm always going to be sitting on the couch in my pajamas and there's no opportunity for growth, then that does not turn into, especially our hungry team members that want to grow, they want to learn, they want to progress. I want to go from a specialist to a director in 10 years. I want to go from a director to a VP in the next 10 years. Create some sort of ladder. You are building a team, you're valuing a team, you're training your team for higher positions and for more opportunities in the future. So have some sort of ladder for your remote workers and communicate that clearly. Now, for some team members, opportunities for growth might not be a vertical ladder. It might be more of, it might have more lateral moves. And so it's learning different positions as well. So in any case, create opportunities for movement and opportunities for growth. Both opportunities for movement and opportunities for growth, so that you can continuously engage your employees, continuously engage your team members, and to truly be effective in your retention efforts. So, we're going to build our team, we're going to value our team, we're going to train our team for success, and then we're going to keep our team. See, these pillars may seem really, really simple. And that's because they are. But this is how you build and lead remote teams. So, first you're going to, one last time, you're going to build your team. You're going to value your team. You're going to train your team. And you're going to keep your team. Value your team with specific benefits and tools for resources for your remote team members. Train your team to grow and adapt in emerging technology. And then keep your team with clear communication and relationships. Welcome to the new normal.